This is the shocking case of Omar al-Hassan, a wealthy Saudi groom, and his bride Layla Karim, whose fairy tale wedding turned into a crime scene before the night was over. What was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives ended in a brutal murder that shook the entire country. Stay with us as we uncover every twist of this chilling story. And if you enjoy true crime like this, make sure you support this channel, subscribe, and stay active so you never miss a case like this again. The wedding had been planned for over a year, and every detail was meant to display wealth, tradition, and power. Guests arrived in designer clothing, chauffeurs lined the street with luxury cars, and photographers captured every moment for society pages. Inside the ballroom, golden decorations shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Tables overflowed with imported roses and rare desserts flown in that morning. The bride walked in wearing a custom gown made in Paris, and the crowd fell silent at the sight of her. The groom, tall and impeccably dressed, appeared calm and collected, but those who knew him well noticed the tightness in his jaw. Every move felt deliberate, as if he was holding something back. The speeches were filled with praise, blessings, and hopes for a beautiful future. When the music began, the couple performed their first dance, and phones flashed from every direction, immortalizing the moment online. But behind the perfect smiles and applause, a quiet storm was brewing. The groom's mind was not on the music, the guests, or the celebration. His thoughts kept circling back to a piece of information he had received earlier that morning, one that had shaken him to his core. No one at the wedding could sense the tension radiating from him. They saw only a man who appeared deeply in love, a couple who seemed destined for happiness. As the night went on and the celebration grew louder, the groom's resolve hardened. He had already made up his mind. This would be the last night anyone would see them together alive. For months before the wedding, the groom had been wrestling with an uneasy feeling he could not shake. At first, it was small things, a late-night notification lighting up her phone, hushed conversations that ended when he entered the room, unexplained trips to meet friends. He told himself he was overthinking it. That doubt had no place in a marriage built on trust. But the more he tried to ignore it, the stronger the feeling became. Then came the first real sign. A friend from abroad casually mentioned seeing the bride's profile on an international dating app. The groom brushed it off, claiming it must have been a fake account. Still, the comment stuck with him. A few days later, a message arrived from an anonymous source with screenshots attached. They showed flirtatious conversations, some recent, some dated months back, with men from different countries. The language in the chats left little room for misunderstanding. He felt his stomach drop as he scrolled through them, each line confirming what he had feared. In a moment of cold anger, he contacted a private investigator to quietly gather evidence. For weeks, the investigator followed her movements, monitoring her online activity and piecing together a private life no one had suspected. As the wedding day approached, the groom grew quieter, more distant, but no one around him understood why. He hid his emotions behind politeness and control, determined to keep up appearances until he had proof. By the time the investigator's final report landed on his desk the morning of the ceremony, his doubts were gone. What he had feared was true, and it left him feeling humiliated and betrayed. The final report arrived in a sealed envelope just hours before the ceremony. The groom opened it alone in his office, his hands steady but his heart pounding. Inside were photographs, chat transcripts, and timestamps that painted a picture more detailed than he had ever wanted. The investigator had uncovered multiple dating profiles registered under fake names, with photos that clearly belonged to the bride. Some profiles were months old, others had been active just days earlier. There were screenshots of conversations that went beyond casual chatting, messages about secret meetings, compliments exchanged, and even plans for travel outside the country. One of the most shocking discoveries was a private folder of images taken inside her bedroom, sent to someone overseas. The groom sat in silence as he read through everything, each page fueling a cold rage. He felt a mixture of heartbreak and fury, not just for himself, but for the public embarrassment he believed he was about to suffer if the truth ever came out. Canceling the wedding crossed his mind, but he quickly dismissed it. The humiliation would be worse if the guests discovered why. Instead, he made a different decision: to go through with the wedding, smile for the cameras, and give the appearance of a happy groom. He shook hands, accepted congratulations, and played his role to perfection. No one would suspect that behind his calm exterior, he was plotting something final. By the time he walked into the ballroom, his mind was no longer filled with doubt, but with a cold, calculated certainty about what he intended to do later that night. When the last guests finally left and the music faded, the ballroom was silent, leaving behind only the faint scent of flowers and spilled champagne. The bride and groom were escorted to the luxury suite prepared for their first night as husband and wife. The room was decorated with candles, silk sheets, and chilled champagne waiting on the table, a scene meant for romance. But there was no warmth between them. The groom dismissed the staff and locked the door behind them. The air felt heavy as the bride began removing her jewelry, unaware of what was about to happen. The groom didn't speak. He simply sat down, opened his phone, and pulled up the investigator's report. He placed it on the glass table where she could see it and waited. The sight of her own photos staring back at her made the bride freeze. She stood there motionless, her face pale as the reality sank in. The room seemed to shrink around them, every second stretching unbearably long. The groom didn't shout, didn't argue. His silence was far more terrifying. It was the kind of silence that carried finality, the kind that comes before an irreversible act. The bride tried to move toward him, perhaps to explain, but he didn't flinch. Whatever chance there had been to calm the storm had already passed. What happened in the minutes that followed would never be completely reconstructed by police, but it was in that locked room, between those four walls, that the night turned from a celebration into a tragedy no one would ever forget. When investigators entered the suite hours later, the scene told a story more horrifying than any words could. The bride's body lay on the cold marble floor, her veil crumpled beside her like a discarded relic of the night's earlier happiness. Blood had pooled near her head, leaving a dark stain against the pale stone. The champagne bottle that had been placed on the table earlier was shattered, its jagged edges scattered across the room. Detectives would later suspect it had been used during the struggle, though no fingerprints were found. The expensive silk curtains swayed gently from the open balcony door, hinting that the groom had left in a rush but with chilling composure. Surveillance cameras captured him walking through the hotel corridor minutes after the murder. He was still wearing his wedding suit, perfectly neat, his steps measured and calm as if nothing unusual had happened. Staff who saw him remembered how unsettlingly quiet he was, offering no explanation as he exited the building. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle outside the room, no witnesses to the killing. The crime scene felt intimate, deliberate, and deeply personal. The police treated it as a case of premeditated murder rather than a crime of passion, though the line between the two seemed blurred. When forensic teams finished their work, the room was sealed off, but the memory of what had happened there would spread quickly through the city. By morning, whispers of the killing had reached social media, sparking outrage, fear, and morbid fascination. The murder sent shockwaves through the city. By dawn, news outlets were reporting that the young bride had been killed only hours after saying her vows. The groom's disappearance turned the case into a scandal, as police quickly realized he had managed to escape before they even arrived at the hotel. Investigators traced his movements through security footage, piecing together his steps. He had walked out of the suite, passed through the lobby, and entered a waiting car that took him directly to a private airstrip on the edge of the city. Within hours, he was aboard his personal jet. Flight logs showed the aircraft left Saudi airspace shortly after midnight, but its destination was unclear. International agencies were notified, and Interpol issued a red notice, beginning a global manhunt. Despite the efforts, the groom seemed to vanish completely. His wealth and influence gave him access to safe routes and discreet contacts who could hide him from authorities. Rumors spread that he had fled to a country with no extradition treaty, where he could live freely beyond the reach of justice. Others claimed he had changed his appearance and was moving between private estates in different countries. The case dominated headlines, dividing public opinion. Some saw him as a murderer running from justice, while others viewed him as a man who acted out of rage and cultural pressure, taking matters into his own hands. Authorities promised to find him, but every lead seemed to end in silence. Months passed with no confirmed sightings, and the mystery of where he had gone only deepened, making the case even more haunting and unforgettable. As the investigation continued, a darker and more complicated side of the story began to emerge. Detectives uncovered hidden bank accounts that had been opened in the bride's name, containing large sums of money transferred from unknown sources. They found records of luxury purchases and secret trips abroad that she had never disclosed to her family. Travel documents showed visits to Europe and Dubai under the guise of shopping trips, but surveillance footage revealed she had been meeting with men during some of these travels. Digital forensics painted an even clearer picture. Hundreds of messages exchanged with different men over several months, some of them highly personal. There were discussions about leaving the country, starting a new life, and even taking advantage of the groom's wealth once the marriage was complete. Investigators concluded that she had been living a double life, maintaining the appearance of a perfect future wife, while simultaneously pursuing relationships and financial opportunities elsewhere. These revelations ignited heated debates online and in the media. Some argued that her actions did not justify the violent end she met, while others believed the groom's reaction, though extreme, had been fueled by deep betrayal and fear of public humiliation. The bride's family publicly rejected the narrative of her double life, insisting that much of the evidence was fabricated or taken out of context. The case became more than just a murder investigation. It turned into a cultural flashpoint, sparking conversations about trust, marriage, and honor in a society where reputation carries enormous weight. The truth about her intentions remained murky, leaving the public divided and hungry for answers. Exactly 1 week after the murder, a major news outlet received an unmarked envelope that would reignite the case. Inside was a handwritten letter, neatly folded, along with a flash drive containing digital copies of the same message. The letter was signed with the groom's full name and appeared to be a confession. In it, he detailed the moment he discovered the truth about his bride, how he felt stripped of his dignity, and why he believed he could not allow the humiliation to become public knowledge. He described sitting in the suite that night, looking at her, and feeling as though the entire wedding had been a carefully constructed lie. He wrote that he did not act in anger but in what he called clarity, claiming he had made his decision before the first dance had even begun. The letter ended with a chilling statement that he had restored his honor and would never face trial. He claimed to have left the country permanently and hinted that he had protection from powerful allies who would ensure he was never extradited. Authorities verified that the handwriting matched samples from his business records, lending credibility to the confession. The letter was released to the public, shocking those who had believed he might be innocent or wrongly accused. The groom's family refused to comment, further fueling speculation that they were helping him remain hidden. For many, the letter was not closure but a reminder that justice might never be served. It turned the case from a tragedy into a ghost story, one in which the killer was still free, living somewhere in the world, untouchable. Years later, the murder remains one of the most infamous and unsettling cases in Saudi Arabia's modern history. The luxury hotel suite where the tragedy unfolded has never been reopened to the public, with staff claiming it brings bad luck to anyone who enters. Guests report feeling uneasy when passing the hallway where the room is located, and some even say they hear faint sounds at night, whispers, soft footsteps, or a door clicking shut even though no one is inside. The case continues to spark debates on television and social media, with true crime enthusiasts dissecting every piece of evidence that has been made public. The bride's family still calls for justice, demanding that the groom face trial, while his relatives maintain a wall of silence, refusing to confirm his whereabouts. Over the years, alleged sightings of the groom have been reported in different countries, a private island in the Maldives, a villa in Morocco, even luxury resorts in Europe, but none have been verified. Each new rumor reignites public interest, drawing fresh attention to a case that refuses to fade from memory. Some view the groom as a cold-blooded killer who escaped punishment, while others believe he acted in line with a strict code of honor that outsiders will never fully understand. The truth of what really happened in those final minutes between the couple may never be known. What remains is a haunting reminder of how quickly love, pride, and betrayal can turn a celebration into a crime scene and leave behind a mystery that still captures the imagination of those who hear it.